are several preconceptions which delayed the recognition of evolution in nature. And they arose from man's tendency to project the image of his own mind onto the world around him. 1. The biblical notion of special creation. 2. The Greek philosophical notion of ideal forms. Most societies explain the origin of living world as an act of providential design. For Western Europe, this doctrine is enshrined in the Bible. According to the book of Genesis, God formed the world and stocked it with the wealth of clearly distinguishable living forms. Christian theologians extracted several important dogmas from this myth. Christian writers argued with one another about the exact date of the creation, but they all agreed it was a comparatively recent event. The universe is 6,000 years old. That's my ruling. According to Orthodox Christian thought, the appearance of the modern Earth was the result of two factors. 1. The shape God has given it in the beginning. 2. The damage he inflicted on it when he punished man with the flood. They thought that once Adam had named all the plants and animals, these inaugural forms bred true to type and never changed their identity. They thought that when God inundated the world, he ordered Noah to set aside a representative pair of every living type, so that after the flood the world would be repopulated exactly as before. Behind the dogmas of creationism lay the notion of intelligent providential design. Although this is not explicitly mentioned in the book of Genesis, it became the most forceful argument in favor of a special creation. As biological research developed during the 18th century, scientists were more and more struck by the fitness and efficiency of living things. Fins, feathers, heart, lungs and eyes were so admirably adapted to the functions they served. It seems inconceivable they could have arisen spontaneously, let alone by chance. They must have been deliberately designed. Here at last was a rational argument in favor of God's existence. This natural theology gave traditional Christianity a new lease of life. When Darwin was growing up, the argument from design was a most powerful to evolutionary thought. Nature was a living record of God's benevolent foresight. The most famous expression of this argument was Bishop Paley's evidence of Christianity. According to Bishop Paley, the transparency of the cornea, the precision of the lens and the adjustability of the pupil, all cooperate to serve vision. The marks of design was too strong to be gotten over. Design must have a designer, that designer must be a person, that person is God. Darwin knew Paley's book by heart, and confessed that in his youth he had been enchanted by its unarguable logic. Even Huxley assumed that intelligent creation was the most plausible explanation for the beautiful efficiency of nature. In the early years of the 19th century, the argument from design spearheaded the attack on the evolutionary thought. In England, the religious dogmas of creationism played an especially important part in delaying evolutionary thought. This was partly because the Anglican Church was built into the political structure of Great Britain, and any threat to Christian orthodoxy implied an even greater threat to social stability. Although the doctrine of creationism played an important part in the continental thought, the philosophical idealism of Plato was just as important, if not more so. This notion is also known as essentialism. According to Plato, the physical world was a mirage from which little reliable information could be gained. The only things which really existed were changeless ideas or forms, and the objects which existed in the physical world were distorted changeable shadows of these permanent unalterable essences. This means that change and variation were mere illusion, and genuine reality consisted of fixed types, permanently distinguished from one another. Physical tables might differ from one another, but the essential table, the ideal genuine table, the distinct type which lies beneath all these differences is fixed forever. A permanent stereotype which outlasts change and transcends variation. If the ideas is applied to nature, it rules out the possibility of biological change. Living giraffes might differ from one another, and they might even vary from one generation to the next, but if all giraffes are regarded as example of a permanent ideal giraffe, these variations are insignificant, and do not imply that the species as a whole has changed or will ever do so. Once it had been inaugurated as an ideal, the giraffe was a permanent feature of the world. The permanence of each type was guaranteed by the mechanism of inheritance. According to Aristotle and his followers, the development of the fetus is the fulfillment of an idea. as if the fertilized egg contained a spiritual power working towards a predetermined end, like a sculptor forming a statue from a block of featureless marble. Starting as a small mass of shapeless matter derived from the menstrual blood of mother, the fetus slowly acquires the limbs and organs of the adult. This is achieved by a spiritual power contained in the male sperm. According to Aristotle, nature was not simply a list of ideal types, but an orderly ladder. This ladder was grounded in inanimate matter, rose step by step towards immaterial spirit. Suspended between were the various ranks of living things. First simple plants, and then primitive animals. Next came fish, then reptiles, followed by birds and mammals. Halfway up the flight of stairs stood man, half body and half spirit. Above him came the various orders of disembodied angels, and above all was God himself. This arrangement provided the 18th century monumentally static picture of nature. This picture had a strong appeal for all those with a vested interest in maintaining the traditional structure of human society. The existence of a great chain of being explained and justified the inequalities of man and vindicated a society in which everyone knew his place and no one had pretensions to rise.